the Szabo cast. Here we discuss all things from a working class, trans, anarchist, analytical perspective. Due to the nature of this show, listener discretion is advised. My name is Skylar, my pronouns are she, they, they, and I'm your host. Thank you for joining us today.
There's a lot that I could have made an episode about in the last 7 months, but I didn't because of several reasons, in fact. One, I had various other projects and still have various other projects that I'm focusing on, but also the particular project that I am hinting at that I want to get done, which is the anti-Zionist Jews episode. I have all of my pieces together to make this episode, but I really am just in a point where the project is overwhelming to me. And I want to do it right. I want to do it justice. I want it to have the coverage that it deserves, and I don't want to just do it just for a quick buck. Although none of my videos or projects ever make a quick buck. Not even a buck. But I digress. But that's just to kind of give you an idea as to why I haven't been uploading on this channel in a while. It's a mixture of like other projects, other things going on in my life, but also more specifically just the fact that I am working on something and it's taking a very long time. So I figured, why not just do an episode to kind of hold people over until then. Today we're going to be talking about Donald Trump's departure from Benjamin Netanyahu. And I think this is an interesting moment for many reasons. And I think additionally, there's a lot of ways we can truly look at this thing, not just from the Democratic and Republican Party perspective, but also as anti-colonists and anti-Zionists. The first thing we should probably say right off the bat is that this is not being done because Donald Trump saw the light and realized that what Benjamin Netanyahu is doing in Gaza and the West Bank is literally immoral. Donald Trump is not some anti-colonist hero. Donald Trump is not some anti-Zionist critic. No, Donald Trump is a nationalist, and he wants one thing, and that is for his own political interests to be rooted in the American nation state. Now, I have no fucking clue how Donald Trump thinks he's going to pull that off, considering all of his tariff policies are literally ruining the country. I mean, I just went to the Dollar Tree, and even those prices were raised recently. I don't think I'm out of line saying that in and of itself was not a coincidence. But look, I am pretty fucking sure that this is because Benjamin Netanyahu is an insufferable piece of shit. Yeah, Americans do pretty much just do things based on vibes, and I'm pretty sure that Donald Trump separating from Benjamin Netanyahu is specifically because Benjamin Netanyahu, on a personal level, is an insufferable piece of shit. Not that I would know personally, I've never met the guy, but we did an episode on this podcast where Benjamin Netanyahu moaned, bitched, and complained that Biden wasn't giving him enough weapons, even though Biden just at that time, at the point, gave Benjamin Netanyahu even more weapons. So it's really interesting that we're at a point to where Donald Trump won the U.S. election, and of course, there was a huge honeymoon period for Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu, whom, they don't have to worry about the United Nations or the International Criminal Court coming on their asses because they don't recognize those jurisdictions, and the U.S. is on the UN Security Council, so they've got supreme authority over the oversight of Israel's war crimes in Gaza and the West Bank and Lebanon and Syria. But Donald Trump outflanked Joe Biden on his support for Israel, even though Joe Biden is a Catholic Zionist. A couple of the things that Donald Trump did for Benjamin Netanyahu was lift the sanctions off of some of the settlers that were in the West Bank. These settlers in particular were sanctioned because of how violent they were to the people of the West Bank. And I do think that this comes at a time where we see these fires taking place in Israel, but that's because these Zionist settlers were setting fire to the olive trees that were native to the land. And by extension, they were planting European trees down into the Levant region, which I don't know if you've noticed, but it's a desert. So they're not native to that land, and by extension, they're going to be more flammable as a result. So yeah, this ecocide that you're seeing was not only intentional, but it is backfiring against the Israelis. And although I do feel for those who want to inflict karma onto the Zionists, the truth of the matter is that those olive trees who are native to the land and are sacred to the Palestinian people should have never been burned down to begin with. This is on top of West Bank Zionists particularly burning down Palestinian buildings and then building settlements which were being sold in the United States, by the way. Unfortunately, I was not there to protest it because I'm literally on the east coast of the United States, but there was a point between October 7, 2023 and now where in Los Angeles they were selling condominiums and property in the West Bank. It was rightfully protested against, and it was protested against by Jews who were on the receiving end of police state violence and were arrested as a result, because Jews know what genocide looks like. Of course they're gonna protest it. That's a no-brainer. And they did the right thing by doing so. So lifting off the sanctions of those Zionist settlers in the West Bank is one of the things that Donald Trump did for Benjamin Netanyahu. Another thing that Donald Trump did was lift this ban that would have prevented 2,000-ton bombs to be delivered to Israel, which we know where that's going. And holy shit, 2,000-ton bombs. Like, for real, homies. What the fuck? You have to think about this from multiple perspectives. You have to think about how much it is to even transport items, regular everyday items on a plane, right? When you bring your luggage, you're going to pay a significant amount of money for that kind of thing. And then to go to 3 states over or something like that? Yeah, that's a lot of money. And of course, you're going to want to make sure that that stuff gets transported safely. So on top of all of that, you have to now consider how much that it costs for the military to be able to, manufacture these bombs and then to ship these bombs, fly them overseas into the Levant area, probably being stationed in Germany or something as a layover. If the figures that were in the billions during the Biden administration weren't enough of an indicator as to how much money is going into this project, you can only imagine how much 2,000-ton bombs would cost to manufacture, ship, fly overseas, and to implement into a genocide. So it's been less than half a year into Donald Trump's second administration, and yet we're already seeing so much unconditional support to the Israeli government that not even Joe Biden himself could ever dream of doing, even though Joe Biden, the Catholic Zionist that he is, did so seemingly unconditionally himself, like a fucking coward, and he will forever be remembered as a genocidal coward. However, we're in a situation now where Donald Trump has done something that the genocidal coward Joe Biden has never been able to do, and that is to withdraw from Israel and their relationship with each other. Now, we need to keep in mind that this is just words, right? We don't know for sure how much support is being withdrawn from Israel. I imagine manufacturing bombs might slow down or be halted entirely. I imagine that there may be some kind of negotiation between Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump at some point in the future, maybe as an attempt to reestablish some kind of relationship with each other. But as of right now, I don't see that happening. What I do see happening, however, is probably, and this is just a guess here, sustained immunity in the United Nations and the International Criminal Court. Because let's face it, this dissolution of this relationship is going to pretty much just be a personal fallout between two of the biggest spoiled brats in the world. But regardless as to what the administration is, Israel and the United States are going to unfortunately remain economic partners, and military partners at that. But that's just my speculation. I could be wrong, and hey, maybe this will lead to Benjamin Netanyahu getting arrested. Maybe he'll be put on trial. Maybe he will actually see jail time. Or maybe that fucker will get executed. And I hope so. But I also hope that the U.S. presidents also see the same kind of punitive justice that the International Criminal Court wishes to inflict onto Benjamin Netanyahu. Joseph Biden and Kamala Harris are not innocent on this. As much as we want to point fingers at Donald Trump, rightfully so, we need to recognize that the Democratic Party are very much complicit in all of this. In fact, I have a very good example of specifically this. It's kind of interesting. We've got Papa Mike Huckabee, who was appointed by Donald Trump to be the ambassador to Israel. And he made a tweet recently that reads, quote, "It's reckless and irresponsible for press to allege that the President of the United States and the Israeli Prime Minister are not getting along. Bibi has spent more time with Donald Trump than I have in the past 3 months. And I'm his ambassador. The relationship between U.S. and Israel remains strong." End quote. Now, I just gotta say a few things about this before we move on to the next example, and that is, this sounds like cope coming from Mike Huckabee, that he wants to spend more time with Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu, but he can't, and I'm his ambassador. That's fucking great. Man, Michael Huckabee, you're getting third wheeled so hard right now. It's so funny. But this comes at a time when the United States and Hamas are having ceasefire negotiations without the input of Israel. So even if, like, say, Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump are not homies anymore, the truth of the matter is that, yeah, he is right. Unfortunately, Israel and the United States are still going to have some kind of economic influence and economic support for each other. When I say each other, I should probably clarify and say it's a one-way support system, but you guys already know that. So in response to Ambassador Mike Huckabee's tweet saying this about Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump, we have the congressman to the 10th District of New York, Daniel Goldman, a member of the Democratic Party, saying, quote, "The Trump administration can try and gaslight us with hollow words, but actions speak louder." So in the same tweet, just to pause for a second, he goes over 3 main points here. 1, fired Walt's party because he was too hawkish on Iran. 2, entered into a deal with the Houthis that excludes Israel. 3, pursuing Saudi deal without Israel normalization. Trump is abandoning Israel. End quote. This is a Democratic Party fucking congressman making this statement. You have to remember that members of the Knesset, and by extension the Israeli government, are bloodthirsty fucking psychopaths. And I'm not just saying that just to be colorful, I'm saying that because they specifically do things that are specifically psychopathic, like trying to cut off people's water and food and power, all while shooting them down and bombing them down and hunting down children specifically, and not to mention many of the members of the Knesset, as well as the Israeli government as a whole, have made public statements with genocidal intent. So, of course, politically, the GOP in the United States and the Israeli government align politically, of course, but Israel's not as good as holding some kind of public relations image to make its genocide more palatable to the rest of the world. Besides, every time there has been some kind of negotiation between the United States, Israel, and, say, Hamas or the Houthis or so on and so forth, it ends up being inconclusive. Who would have thought that a whole country doing a genocide where there's negotiations on a peace deal between the people that they're genociding and the genocidal fucking maniacs themselves would lead to negotiations being inconclusive. Who would have thought? I had no idea. And the sad thing is that you don't even need to be left-wing, let alone pro-Palestinian, let alone anti-Zionist to even see that. You try going back in time with a time machine, hypothetically, and talking to Albert Fish out of Eating Children and see how well that goes for you. It's really interesting how people these days look back to Albert Fish and just use Albert Fish as some kind of wild spectacle, where you have Benjamin Netanyahu ordering his military to hunt down children for fuck's sake. If anything, I'm basically calling Benjamin Netanyahu worse than Albert Fish. That's fucking crazy, my friend. Like, just put that into perspective. Think about how people these days celebrate serial killers like Jeffrey Dahmer's. And then you got like Benjamin Netanyahu, who outflanks all of those guys by like thousands upon thousands of numbers of people dead. So when you have this fucking Democratic congressman bitching about how Donald Trump is erasing relationships with Israel, it comes across as the Democratic Party trying to appear more right-wing than that of the Republican Party. We live in a plutocracy. I don't think Bernie Sanders has a right to use the word oligarchy, because an oligarchy is still some kind of illusion that we have more than one choice in our political leadership. No, we live in a plutocracy. We live in a government that works for the rich, by the rich. And all of these decisions, even with Israel or without Israel for that matter, is explicitly for the interest of the ruling class. And I mentioned earlier the tariffs because it's a prime example of how it's being presented as an America First policy when really it's going to screw over the working class first and foremost. These are nationalist policies. These are nationalist decisions. To Donald Trump, a white nationalist fascist, this is just purely about doing what he does best, and that is stepping on others and abandoning those that he no longer sees useful. He's done this before with other people. He's gonna do it again. Look at how they handled the Epstein files. The GOP House Judiciary Twitter account kept teasing that they were going to release the Epstein files any day, until eventually they literally linked Never Gonna Give You Up by Rick Astley, effectively Rick rolling everybody who wanted to know who was on the Epstein list. And I mean, come on guys, we know why. We're not stupid. We weren't born yesterday. It's because members of Mossad and the United States government were both on that list. We know already that Bill Clinton and Donald Trump were both seen with Epstein. And of course we know that Mossad has close relationships with Ghislaine's family, Maxwell Ghislaine specifically. So of course they're going to want to cover this up. That's a no-brainer. The Republican Party has no standards other than absolute rule. Ruling with an iron fist, even if it means stripping people of their First Amendment right, like with Mahmoud Khalil, who was detained for organizing pro-Palestinian protests on the Columbia University campus. However, now we are seeing the tides shift in favor of the pro-Palestinian protesters, because as of recently, some of those protesters have been getting out of jail. So, I wanted to leave this rather short episode somewhat on a positive note, because I want you guys to realize something, that in all of this doom and gloom, we can't stop fighting. Sure, the ruling class have each other's back more than any other demographic that I know of, but look, we need to have each other's back. We need to have solidarity with each other. And you know what? Victories can be won. And you want to know something, my friends? Is that every time we do assemble, and every time we do show the fucking ruling class who we are, as people, united, where there's more of us than there are of them, they cave in, they quack, they fucking submit, and they do what we tell them to do. So don't stop fighting. Make sure that you put your voice on the line. Let the ruling class fight each other. It makes our job a lot easier. Thank you for tuning in today. I'm going to wrap up this episode by saying that I'm going to be uploading more episodes soon, as opposed to a 7-month gap. But go check me out on YouTube and Spotify, where you can find all the episodes. Take care, folks. Until next time.